Okay. Let's get me to set this all up again. Okay, control locks are on. Rightio, today it's the, earlier today I did the Learjet, but thought I'd pop on and show off the P-51, one of my most favorite aircraft ever. So this one here is the A2A or AccuSim P-51D Mustang. This is a D25, I believe, that we have. Should say on the number plate here. I guess it doesn't. Anyway, so this is incredibly detailed and it's a beautiful model. These guys have done an excellent job making this aircraft a flight simulator, but even more so on their flight simulator model, the actual physics and stuff. It's wonderful. But we're going to fly it. Here we are. This is Archerfield Airport in real life in Brisbane, Queensland, which is where I was born and raised. This airfield is quite significant to me because I took my first flight here in real life. I also had my father train and earn his private pilot's license here as well. So this is a mod that I've personally made for Flight Simulator 10, where I've actually taken a piece of Google Maps and put it on there for realism. I've also edited the taxiways a bit to reflect the real Archerfield, and yeah, it's only half complete because it's a personal project of mine on the side, but it's here nonetheless. And I didn't like how the default Archerfield in Flight Simulator 10 felt. So anyway, let's get on with the show. Hitting shift 2 brings up our little notes here. Tells me how the cabin is right now. It's nice and steady. Steady 26 degrees. Honestly, I would be sweating my balls off in 26 degrees. I prefer it around 15 myself. That's in degrees C, not Fahrenheit. Okay, ground speed, all that stuff, not really required. Take off power settings at 61 inches manifold pressure, 300 RPM. Yep, so it gives us all relevant information on the aircraft's performance. Okay, so these little sticky notes here are kind of telling us how this all works. At the moment, these are just notes that need to keep in mind. We'll go to page number 2. Upon entering the cabin, flaps up, gear down. So right now the flaps are down because I had put them down previously and forgot to bring them back up again. Okay, coolant doors on auto. Pretty much all of these you want to just keep on auto, which they are. Those are the switches right there. Throttle cracked. So with my flight simulator, we're paused, aren't we? There we go. So just crack the. They say always crack the throttle about 1 inch. That's what you need for the startup. Prop full forward. Make sure it auto cutoff, which means it is completely isolated. You'll see that it actually clicks through 2 motions: full rich, auto lean, then cutoff. So auto idle cutoff is literally no fuel flow. Supercharger set to auto. Supercharger is this tiny little switch right here. Underneath that little hat switch, you actually literally have to pull it up. Let's see, fuel cutoff on, which it is, right there. Should be right there. Magneto switches are off, so both are set to off. Wheel brakes and parking brakes are on. Which they now are. Check flying controls. Full, free, and corrected descent. So what it means by that is, at the moment I can't move my flight controls at all because I have the flight control lock on. Just take it off. Now we have full free movement. Very important that you remember that before you take off. That would be very embarrassing. Okay, engine starting. Battery on or APU connected. We don't need an auxiliary power unit. So all we need to do is go down to this tiny little panel over here, I believe. Battery right there. So battery on, generator switch on. Okay, prime and hold for 4 seconds. So get your primer. 2, 3, 4. All good, right? So what we're going to do, and you're going to need a few hands to do this. So I've got the mixture lever and throttle levers right here, so I cracked 1 inch already. Now once we engage the starter, we count 6 blades, literally 6 blades past the field of view. Once it does, it's going to get us to switch the magnetos on, and when it starts to chug, we then flick the mixture lever, which is your red lever, into full rich. So, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Both mags on. Starts up. Mixture's full rich. The engine just starts. There we go. Check for oil pressure first off. So your oil pressure levers are going to be over here. Now they're going to run a little high at first, but just adjust the RPM of the aircraft. Right now we're at 10,000. Bring it back down a tiny bit more, and just make sure the oil pressure goes down. Fuel flow is good. Starter off. Make sure you don't forget to turn that starter off. I've done that plenty of times. Make sure it runs, which it is. Check oil pressure. Cold engine max oil pressure should be 150 psi. Right now it's just under, so that's good. It's 120. It'll go down to 80. Warm engine to 15 degrees of oil temp. So your oil temperature is going to be, if I remember correctly, right there. Okay, increase to 2000 RPM, check mags and cycle prop. So we're going to wait for that. Now, right now our flaps are completely down. So push that in to gain hydraulic pressure. We're going to raise the flaps. That way we know we got hydraulic pressure. Excellent, so flaps are coming up. So carburetor heat lever should be off because it's not, yep, the carburetor air lever is fine. I always check those just in case, because if you have the carb heat on, it doesn't really do much for the engine if there's no icing. In fact, it can actually stall the engine because you're putting hot air into hot air. Okay. So none of these need to be on at this time. Fuel cut off into off. We're draining from the left tank, the left wing right now. So they always suggest draining from the fuselage tank when you're on the ground, because gravity just feeds it properly. So we just need to wait for oil pressure. So the oil pressure's going down, as you see. That's fine for it. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to taxi over to this little section over here. We're going to run up and do the mags. This way we can do a brake check as well. This is an aircraft where you need to have your hands and eyes really coordinating. I guess we didn't have fuel in the fuselage tank. 1 second. Just went to read a text message and I was like, oh, that's right, we didn't refuel the fuselage tank. 1 second. I'll make sure we got enough fuel. There we go. It's not impossible to restart the engine. Just bring it back off to idle, put the mags back over. You don't need to really prime it. I mean, you prime it for like 1 second, hit the starter motor, flick over the mags. Should eventually catch. Or you can just hold the primer on. Try this again. 1, 2, 3. These engines can also be a bit fickle. There we go. Almost caught. Let's just stick it back on the left tank for now. Okay. Just keep the mags on for now. I think what would also help that is having the fuel booster pump on and then sticking it on the fuselage tank. There we go, that should fix it. Should turn that off. Always remember the starter switch. Okay. And always remember to refuel the thing. Should have done them. This is why you do walk-arounds before you get to the aeroplane and check the fuel. Yep. So we're going to taxi over here and do a run-up. Parking brakes are off. Just want to be gentle with the aircraft. So we're just going to get it to come up a bit. Our tail wheel is swiveling at the moment, which means instead of using rudder, you want to use your toe brakes quite a lot to get this aircraft to come around. And it does not like to swivel. Especially at low speeds. Do it on the taxiway because there's no other aircraft around us. Now, to taxi this thing, you want to do something called a drunken weave, where you're weaving through the taxiway. See, I can see what's in front of me here, vice versa. It's the only way you can see out of these aircraft. Okay. Just going to put the parking brakes on for now. Now, do a mag check, it's pretty simple. Up to 2000 RPM, so 2000 RPM on the dial. Slowly advance the throttle. Left. Right. Left again. And both. No RPM drop, which is good. Cycle the propeller. RPM should drop around 500. Bring back up. No issues. Try not to bring the throttle back too fast. Okay, so we're good to go. Let's taxi to the runway. I'm going to use the runway ahead of us, which should be 22 left, if I remember correctly. This time we're going to close the canopy. Now, weaving for taxi it takes a bit of time to get used to. Traffic, we're good. Now for the Mustang, you should not need to do any kind of flap for takeoff unless you've got wing tanks installed. But what is important is your trim, which I didn't set until now. Should always set your trim properly. Okay, for takeoff, rudder trim should be 6 degrees at the moment. Oh, it is set to 6. How's that? Okay, and because we have aft fuel, you want to set that to 4 degrees. Should be roughly about there. Okay. Of course, that's aileron trim. That's elevator trim. Don't want to mix those up. Okay. So fuselage tank for takeoff, then switch to the left once we're up. Fuel booster pump off. Okay. Should be set to go. Now slowly advance the throttle forward. Actually, our cabin's really hot. Let me just open up the vents. Nothing in those. Cabin is hot. You don't want your pilot to be hot. Let's see those cabin vent ports again. Here they are. Open that up to 64%. I just, there we go. Lets a bit of air circulate through the cockpit. Okay, we're good to go. Parking brakes off. Slowly advance the throttle forward. Get yourself straightened up first. It's very important that you do that first. And the Mustang has a tendency to really want to push to the left on takeoff. So what you want to do is slowly get the aircraft's tail off the ground first. Okay, once you got it off the ground, you can then adjust with rudder. And mine's... wow, okay. So, my rudder pedals can't correct the amount of torque this thing has. Yet it wants to keep straight now. Okay. Okay, gear up. I'll take it for what it's worth, guys. Everyone's slowly advancing the throttle with my rudder pedals completely firmly against the floor. You can see it right there, right? Doesn't really do much. Could be an error in the flight simulator. Could be my rudder pedals just not being sensitive enough. They seem to be too sensitive. Actually, you should bring that back to 24 inches. 25 RPM. No, sorry. Just getting the steamship cab ready. So 40 inches of manifold pressure, 25. There we go. See what I was saying? Yeah, these things are not sensitive at all. Sensitive enough. They're too sensitive on the ground when you're taxiing with aircraft with nose wheel steering. But once you actually get up to like tail dragger aircraft like the Mustang, it does not give enough deflection. And that's what I noticed versus my Sci-Tech and these Thrustmasters. There's such a difference in controllability. It's a beautiful day to fly though. Back to 25, bring that back to 40-ish. It's a bit turbulent. That's because of Mount Cootha, which is right there. Mount Cootha is a, when I was flying, there was lots of turbulence coming off of that. Now we're up in the air, I'm just going to switch over to our left fuel tank. clouds there. So once you get the steamship cab organised, it's quite a pleasant aircraft to fly. You gotta really watch out for that torque on takeoff though. Especially if you're using thrustmaster rudder pedals. Just got a wing dip there on what I believe is, that's Pannington. Yep, because there's Suncorp Stadium right there. So low clouds on a mountain is not a good thing to fly through. Just want to get above that cloud layer a bit. Just get a bit of altitude, might as well do some acrobatics and show off how the Mustang really flies. One thing you do not want to do, stall this thing in a loop, or stall it in general. The Mustang was known to be really violent in stalls if you got him into deep stalls or accelerated stalls. But stalls by himself, just, you know, straight ahead stalls, not a problem. It's because of this laminar shaped airfoil. They made it so that it was thin at the root, which is next to the fuselage, and then towards the tips it was wider, so it would stall from the outwards in. But doing that made it really good at stalling straight ahead, but in corners and turns and stuff, it didn't like it too much. It was tip stall real easily. They were sensitive, but they were very efficient wings. Right here. The clouds. This is a mod, I believe, that I put on, making the clouds a bit more fluffy than they should be. Just bang the aircraft over a bit. Head towards Archerfield. So we're above Mount Cootha right now. There's a lookout up here that I took my wife to, and we before I migrated to the United States. It's got a beautiful lookout up there. You can see Brisbane, you can see the Mount Flinders, which is in the direction I'm facing now. You can't see it because of the clouds. It's a wonderful place to go up and have a coffee or an ice cream. They'll charge you up the arse though. But most tourist attractions do that. Aircraft has this tendency to want to loft upwards, so I'm just going to trim it down a bit. Get a bit of wind shear right there. Rather when every 15 minutes it updates and it just slams weather into you. Rolls are pretty simple, so obviously wings level, straight ahead, full aileron deflection, and there's a roll. Bit of nose dip, which is to be expected. What the hell? Well, now we can't see the ground at all. Must be thunderstorm or pretty cloudy or overcast back there. To do a barrel roll, which is what Star Fox thinks it is, you've really got to gain a little bit of speed. The whole point of a barrel roll is to do a roll, but cover less distance at the same speed. So you're literally pulling up and rolling over like that. That's a barrel roll. One thing I'll show you that this Mustang will do, I may end up crashing the plane doing this, is accelerated stalling. Accelerated stalling means you are pulling too hard, you're stripping the airflow off the airfoil. So for example, if I go into a corner like this and I just pull up, you're going to notice the aircraft is going to shake and shudder. Because we're actually pulling the airflow off and it's going to kick over like that. That's tip stalling. It means the aircraft is pretty much stalling in a turn. Which means, of course, the wing with more lift is going to, which is the wing closest to gravity, in this case the right hand wing, is going to push the aircraft over like that. It's going to enter into a spin. Which is not a good situation to be in, especially with an airfoil like this. They're a little hard to recover with. So you don't want to do that. You never want to just go, because you will stall the aircraft. You've got to be gentle with them. It also depends on your speed too. Do a loop. Just go down. We'll get a bit of speed first. Loops are pretty simple. So as you pull up, just keep pulling and just bring it down like that. Now this is what I'm saying, you do not want to stall this aircraft in a loop. It does not like it. Immediately push the nose down, like that. That will recover the stall. For some reason this Mustang does not have energy retention in a loop, but it does good at everything else. Maybe it's just me not flying it correctly, but I've just noticed that with this aircraft in particular, that doing loops in it tends to end up in a stall. Just pull the throttle back a bit. Okay, so we're heading southwest now. We should turn this way. Hopefully we get under the cloud layer and I can see where we're flying. Do some low level, high speed flying. These things were known to be races as well. You're familiar with Bob Hoover and the Reno racing circuit they have out in Nevada. Bring that throttle back a bit because we are picking up quite a bit of speed. They would do pylon racing. Oh, there's Archerfield right there. And pylon racing is where you would pretty much race around these 15 pylons in a circuit and you go around and clock the fastest time. There's a few famous crashes that happened as well. One of which was Galloping Ghost, which was a modified P-51D that lost an elevator trim tab in the middle of a race, which pulled the pilot into his seat. It then accelerated into somewhat of a loop and then crashed into the crowd and killed quite a few people. Oh, this is Amberley. Which means we're in Ipswich. This ain't good. One thing that these things did come equipped with was a windshield defroster, which we need now. Well, you can just do this too, which I suggest you do because you can't see a bloody thing until it clears. Heading east now, this is just over the west of Ipswich, or south of Ipswich actually, Ipswich is over there. Just flew over Amberley Air Force Base, which is where my father did all his Air Force work, worked on F-111s. This aircraft is a dream to fly. Like I said, once you get everything organized, it's very smooth, very very wonderful to look at it too, because the bubble canopy just gives you all this, you know, brutal lookout. River up here somewhere, and then follow the Bremer all the way to Archer. It's all defrosted now. So eventually all that should clear up. That way it doesn't feel like we're in a hood filled with smoke. We'll switch it over to the right tank now so we can get a bit of fuel coming over the right. Good practice every 30 minutes to an hour to swap fuel tanks, that way you don't have a fuel imbalance. Not always trimming the aileron trim. Wow, all of a sudden it just disappears. There we all head skywards again. So that's the Brisbane River right there, and that should be the Bremer River junction, or is this the Bremer right here? One thing I notice is every time you fly through a cloud, you have the cabin ventilation open, it always adds a bit of condensation inside the aircraft. That's the Bremer River right there, I think. That should be... in the river, yeah, we should be over Ipswich now. Surely we didn't fly that far west. There's the sea, so they're definitely close. Okay. We should be able to ascend a tiny bit, because Archerfield should be up here in front of us, just underneath this cloud base. Join the circuit for 22 left and then we'll just land. When you come into landing with this aircraft, it's very important that you judge your speed and flat ratios with extreme caution. Because there'll be times where you'll be putting out too much flat, and before you know it, got the aircraft on the brink of stall, you're adding power to try and recover it, and it just becomes a disaster. You really want to glide this thing in with a bit of power if you can. You really don't want to do power on approaches. Yep, there's Archerfield below us. We need to join the left-hand pattern. So we'll fly over the airfield. I'll join the left-hand circuit. Yep. Bring that to full course. Just gonna bring the power back a bit. There we go. We'll say the aircraft does not slow down quite well at all. So as you descend, expect the aircraft to still be a bit slippery in the airstream. You can add a notch of flaps if you wanted to, especially around 200 knots. You can still do that, or miles per hour in this case. It does help a tiny bit, but just keep in mind the aircraft was built to be, aerodynamic. It will slip in the air quite a bit. So add a touch of power there. Like I said, you want to add a bit of power, but not power it in the whole way. So there we are. We're still too fast at the moment. Next set of flaps. There's a gear warning horn. As you can see, it adds a lot of drag really quickly. So you really want to be bang on with this when you can. There we go. There's a lot that's going on in a short period of time. This isn't the best landing I'm going to do. Like I said, practice enough, you'll get it. And the descent rate is quite rapid too. When you get close to the runway, especially when now we're only doing 100 knots, pull the power back gently, just let the aircraft touch down. Like that, there you go. Beautiful. Of course, I've got no control on the ground. Full rudder over, as you can see, and it just doesn't want to respond. Just let the aircraft do its own thing, we'll be right. There we go. It's like my landing was fine, but yeah, once you lose rudder control, I mean, what can you do? There we go. Landing gear up. Well, not landing gear up, I should say the flaps up. If I put the landing gear up, that'd be funny. No sense in going up to the taxiing area because, well, it would take us half an hour to get there. So, to shut it down, bring the canopy open. What I like to do is I'll then reset to the fuselage tank first off. Right, flaps are up, as they should be. Right. You want to bring the mixture all the way out first, then turn your mags off. The reason why is any unburnt fuel doesn't remain in the cylinders. Wait for the propellers to come back. Mags off. That's safe. Okay, and then of course we have a generator, battery off. Pull that open so you dump all your hydraulic pressure. Alright, there you go. That was a bit of an insight to the AccuSim P-51 Mustang. I'm gonna read up on the issue of my rudder pedals and see if I can make them sensitive enough to hold the takeoffs and landings, because it shouldn't be doing that. I think it might just be my rudder pedals or the setup, not necessarily the aircraft, because like I said, it didn't do it with the Cytec rudder pedals I used. But this is a wonderful aircraft, and if you want to buy this thing at full price, I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun, and it will teach you a lot of things about aircraft in general. So until my next stream, take care.